Newcastle fans, the question is straightforward. Will the club wait for the transfer window to close, or will they act now? With heavy injuries in defense and a window that's really heating up, things are far from calm behind the scenes at St. James's Park. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the end, because this story involves a £35 million target, a trio closely watched in Italy, and decisions that could change the course of the season. Newcastle has once again put a familiar face on their radar. Giorgio Scalvini, from Atalanta, is being evaluated again by the club now that he has recovered from injury. And the timing is no coincidence. The loss of Fabian Schär, one of the most reliable players in the squad, has raised a red flag in the defensive sector. The question remains simple. Can they continue the season relying only on what they already have? Or does the moment demand a ready-made reinforcement already observed and studied? Scalvini has always been treated internally as an elite talent, a modern, technically gifted, physically strong defender with above-average game-reading skills. The problem was never quality, but injuries. Since his debut for Atalanta in 2021-22, he has accumulated over 100 appearances and reached the Italian national team. But he could have gone much further if it weren't for the physical problems that interrupted his run. In the last 2 seasons, Scalvini has played little, only 14 games in the last season and a half. Alarming numbers? Yes, but they also raise another question. Does Newcastle see this as a market opportunity? The player's recent return comes at an important moment for Atalanta, who are fighting at the top of Serie A. And it is precisely now that the Magpies are calmly assessing whether the situation has changed. Sources indicate that Newcastle will only go to the market for a defender they already know well. No desperate gambles, no panic signings. Scalvini fits exactly that profile. Observed for years, analyzed in different contexts, technically approved. The question isn't talent, it's risk versus opportunity. Fabian Schär's situation weighs heavily in this equation. The Swiss player was injured after a strange collision with Dominic Calvert-Lewin and now faces a ligament problem in his ankle. Recovery time? Undefined. Eddie Howe tried to reassure, saying that the prognosis is more positive than initially thought. There is no fracture, only ligament damage, but further evaluations by specialists will be necessary. Now think about it. Is it possible to plan the rest of the season without knowing when one of the pillars of the defense will return? It is precisely this type of uncertainty that makes Newcastle look at the market more closely. As if that weren't enough, Dan Burn is also out, with a fractured rib and a punctured lung. The expectation is to have him available again only in February. Until then, the club needs to survive competitively. There is, however, an alternative plan: to call Matt Targett back from Middlesbrough. But that would only happen if all other options fail. Newcastle prefers to resolve the issue with a permanent signing, not just a stopgap. And this is where Scalvini comes into the conversation. Atalanta is asking for around $35 million. The contract runs until 2028. It's not cheap. But the club understands that if they are going to spend money, it should be on someone who has already been scouted for years. And listen up, fans. Scalvini isn't the only name being considered. Newcastle has been consistently monitoring Atalanta for the past 2 years. Another player who is appealing is the Brazilian Ederson, a complete, intense midfielder who could raise the physical and technical level of the midfield. Is he worth the investment? Does he fit into Howe's playing style? In addition, the young, honest Ahanor has also attracted attention. Versatile, he can play as a central defender or left back. This type of multi-skilled player is very important in an increasingly demanding Premier League. Even so, there is no internal doubt. The most admired name remains Scalvini. While Newcastle evaluates new signings, the market is also looking within the club. Reports have emerged that Arsenal and Manchester City are eyeing a Magpies star valued at £60 million. A possible departure of this magnitude could create friction between Eddie Howe and the board. A very direct question. Is Newcastle prepared to lose a key player and at the same time rebuild? Is this sale even in the club's real plans? The good news is big. After years of controlled spending, Newcastle finally feels ready to attack the market aggressively. Internal projections suggest up to $300 million invested in the next 2 transfer windows. Yes, you heard right. A major signing could happen right now. But the club knows that to take one of the best young midfielders in Europe off the market, it will be necessary to make a huge offer. Liverpool, Manchester United, and even Real Madrid are in the running for this Dutch talent. The inevitable question is Newcastle ready to sit at the table with giants and compete financially? The scenario is clear. A weakened defense, a booming market, and big decisions being discussed behind the scenes. Scalvini is a priority, the Atalanta trio is on the radar, and the next transfer window could mark a new level for the club. Now I want to know from you, is 35 million for Scalvini a risk or an opportunity? Would you reinforce now or wait for the injured players to return? Share your opinion, participate in the debate, and stay tuned to Magpies News, because this news segment promises some intense episodes.